want to know how to spray with an airless paint sprayer, maybe you're thinking about renting one if you got a big job or not, I'm going to give you a little rundown on it. They're not really that hard. Not going to show you every detail because each airless is a little bit different, but I'm going to give you some pointers, show you how it works right after this. And it's my goal as a 35-year drywall professional who's owned his own business of Mr. Patch Drywall for 15 years. It's my goal to pass on my knowledge and my skills to you guys before I retire, which might not be too long now. I like to help you guys learn how to tackle these projects yourself, save yourself some money, and take pride in your workmanship, and I'm going to show you how to do it right. So if you like these kind of videos, be sure and subscribe and click that bell icon. If you click the bell icon, you'll get notified each time we put out another one of these that'll help you out. All right, first let's go over a few details about an airless. An airless paint sprayer is actually called an airless because it doesn't pump air into it. But the act of spraying the air coming out of here, it moves a lot of air. So it's very, very similar to when you go to the car wash and you spray and air goes everywhere and water goes everywhere. Well, it's still moving a lot of air, so it might seem like it's not airless, but it's doing it simply by pumping the fluid under pressure through this tip. And it often comes out of here at PSI of around 2,500 to 3,000. I forget the PSI exactly, but it's very high pressure. So number one, there's a safety concern. Never get your skin in front of this tip because that can actually inject paint right under your skin. It can be very dangerous. You can get in serious trouble. So make sure you always treat this kind of like a gun. Don't walk around with your hand on the trigger if you're not prepared to spray. That would be safety number one. The parts to this gun are basically this, they call it a hand-tight connector, which means you should be able to loosen it by hand without tools. It doesn't require a ton of force. So once you get it lined up pretty much where you want, you just hand tighten it. The other part to this is your tip. Now these tips come in all kinds of different sizes and patterns. They're removable. All right, on the tips, this green tip is what's called, I believe it's called a fine finish tip, which there's another kind of fine finish for like spraying lacquers and that, but this is for airless and latex paint. And what it does is it atomizes the paint a lot easier under lower pressure. This airless I have is about an $800 airless. The model is a Pro 19, and it was, like I say, $800 or $900, but in that price range, it can struggle a little bit. Airless sprayers, it's hard work for them to pump this out right. What was happening with mine was when I used a normal tip in here, it was struggling to not give me tails. Okay, here's an illustration of what tails are. You see the normal pattern. Well, tails are when you get basically these little tail streamers out on the sides, and it can really ruin your paint job. And that's usually caused by low pressure. And low pressure could be because you don't have the pressure knob turned up high enough, but often it's because you've got clogged filters, and there can be filters in your gun and on the machine, or even at the suction intake. Or it could be that you're using too big of a tip, which doesn't allow the machine to atomize it properly, or your machine may even be too small, and you could be spraying something that's too thick for your machine. So there's a lot of variables here. But if you've got everything in good order, you usually just need to turn the pressure up. So anyway, in order to avoid the tails, I went to this tip here, which takes less pressure to atomize it, which means breaking it up into that fine pattern. And it has a little less overspray. It kind of comes out gentler. I think it sprays great. I love the tip myself, and it took away the problem of tails. So this is a tip I would recommend if you're renting one and have to buy a tip. Now, if you rent one of the things to look for is the tip pattern, because if they give you a gun with a worn out tip, you can still use it but it's going to use more paint and it's not going to do as good a job. You may want to complain and get another tip. I'll show you tip patterns here. Okay, let me talk about this switchable tip. They call this a switchable tip. In one direction, it sprays the nice fan pattern. But if you get a clog, which happens fairly often, you can turn this around and it'll spray backwards, which means the clogged particles over here, now it'll just spray it out. So you do a quick burst, clean it up, switch back, and you're spraying again. Okay, let me explain tip sizes. You notice the one on the left says 210, the one on the right is 516. That is the tip size. There's two parts to a tip size. So let's take the example of 210. The first part is 2, which means at a normal spraying distance, it will spray 4 inches wide. The 10 is the opening size, so it has a smaller opening size than the 516. So on the 516, it should spray about 10 inches wide and will let more fluid come out. Therefore, you can either spray faster or it will put it on heavier. I normally spray with about a 619 or 516, 519, somewhere in there. And that works good on big surfaces like ceilings and walls. The smaller tips are for like spraying trim work and things like that. All right, let me point out something about the airless tip. There's a pressure setting on your sprayer. A lot of painters call it the pump. So on the airless pump, there's a pressure setting, and you do not want the highest pressure. The higher the pressure you spray at, the more overspray. It's going to atomize it more, and when it over atomizes it, you're just going to have fog going everywhere. You're going to waste a lot of paint, and it's just not a good way to spray. So one way to check is to spray a test pattern on some masking like this. And I usually just do a little burst. So like that, and then look at it, and you want this shape. You want it to be narrow, no tails on the end, like I showed you earlier, and clean. And if you turn it down and you start getting tails, that tells you went too low. Then crank it back up a notch or two. That's usually about where you want it. If it feels like it's coming out too slow, you might turn it up a little bit more. If you see too much overspray, you can just feel like there's a fog everywhere. It's too high. So you'll kind of see when I spray, there's not really that much fog going everywhere. So now when spraying, I do highly recommend a full spraying gear because it'll get everywhere on you. It'll get down your collar, in your ears. So I have this full suit. I'll put a link to these. These are my favorites. I get them off Amazon. I've tried a lot of them that just rip really quickly and they don't fit me. I'm 6'2" and I need a tall one, so this one fits me good. And then I absolutely love the ones with a hood. You can get a spray sock, but often the spray sock leaves gaps and it just doesn't fit right. This thing, I put this up and it covers everything that my mask doesn't. So I like to wear gloves and I wet my gloves, and that makes it easier to, if I need to wipe a little paint off something, maybe it dripped or whatever, wet gloves work better, and it keeps my hands clean. So if any paint gets onto the gloves with wet gloves, when I take them off, it just comes right off my hands. Then I, of course, wear shoes, so I'm basically covered head to toe. Now let's talk about the mask. You can get a simple respirator, which is what is inside of this. There's a simple respirator in there, but this is a full face mask. Now they run about $100 plus. So if you're on a budget, you might want just this part and just cover up as much as you can, wear some goggles, and you're gonna end up with paint on you. There are products you can put on your skin that's supposed to make it come off easier. I've been spraying with a full face for so long, I can't remember how I used to do it. I'm a drywaller, so I don't paint a lot, but when I do these popcorn ceilings, I pretty much paint 90% of them. That's mainly what I paint, and it's always ceilings. And these things have a tear-off face shield, so when they get really dirty, you can clean them over and over, but eventually it just comes to a point where you're not seeing through it clear. Rip it off, clean this part underneath, put a new one on, and you're good to go. And then these respirators have these interchangeable parts. There's a pre-filter right in here that's good for capturing a lot of that mist that gets on here. And then inside is the real filter. That'll last you quite a long time if you change out your pre-filters. I just basically base it on if it starts getting hard to breathe, I change out the pre-filter. If that doesn't solve it, I need a new filter. And they just come on and off like that, so they're pretty simple to swap a new one out, and this part just pops off and the pre-filter's right in there. It's pretty easy to breathe in them. What sucks about it is they're going to get covered in paint while you're spraying. Even if you're trying to stay away from it, it's gonna get a mist on it. Pretty soon it gets harder and harder to see. So I keep a microfiber cloth nearby, and every now and then I go over and I'll use my wet gloves to wipe off the paint. Then I microfiber polish it so I can see again. I have to do that like every 10-15 minutes usually. Okay, so that's the safety gear. Let's talk about the painting now. I didn't grow up a painter. I've never been taught by a painter. I'm self-taught. So here's what I do. And if you're a painter and I'm doing something that could be done better, let me know. You know, I'm still learning after 35 years, but again, I grew up doing drywall. I've only painted maybe 200 jobs in my life, and a lot of them were small and a lot are easy like this. So I've learned some mistakes not to make. Pretty much everything I've learned has been through the school of hard knocks. I'm spraying a primer today that's about $50 for 5 gallons. It's a PVA drywall primer from Lowe's. But let's get on to spraying. What you're trying to do when you spray is to get a 50% overlap on all your paint. So here's the little demo that I was talking about with 50%. You would go one pass there, and then starting right here, holding your gun roughly 12 to 14 inches away, you go another pass. And I like to trigger it. You might see some guys that do the constant spray. Those guys are really good. They've done it a lot. You can get away with it. But what happens is every time you come to the end, you slow down, turn, whip, come over here. It'll get thicker on the ends, and you're trying to put this on as evenly as you can. That's one reason you do 50% overlaps. It just puts it on more even. So again, hold it about 12 inches away, move it at a steady speed, keep the speed the same all the time. Try not to speed up, slow down, don't go in zigzag lines. Absolutely do not do some kind of just fill it in pattern. This needs to be a very distinct pattern. This way, 50%, just back and forth. And you want to try and go from one wall to the other. With primer, it's not quite so critical, but what happens is if you don't, each time you come back, you get heavier right there on that overlap. You can't help it. And the heavier it is, the more likely it is to have a different gloss, and it will give it away. You'll have these banding, stripy looks. So it's best if you can go from wall to wall. Now another way you can help even it out is you can back roll it, which means take a roller, load it up with some paint real lightly, roll it out a little bit on the ceiling because you just want a light load on that roller, and then have the Airless guy start spraying, and you just roll over everything he does right behind him, like 30 seconds behind him. Stay out of the immediate spray, and that will help even things out. It will also give it a little roller stipple. Okay, here's a little illustration showing how you should hold your gun parallel to the surface, 12 to 14 inches away, and put it on as evenly as possible. So now I'm going to demonstrate. You can watch a little bit, and that'll basically cover an Airless. If you got any questions that I didn't cover, ask me in the comments down below, and let me know what you think of this video. If you got any pointers for me, let me know. I'm looking to learn something new all the time. So here we go with the spraying. Okay, there is a slight mist in the air. There always will be after this, but I'm gonna stay over here. I didn't get enough in the air. I can breathe this for a little bit, but I need to get my mask back on. Couple more pointers for you. Whenever you're spraying, you do the 12 to 14 inches and go in overlaps, but you also don't tilt your gun. When you tilt your gun, you get further away, you get a wider pattern, and you get a lighter pattern. So in order to keep it even, keep your hand at a 90 always. I prefer the triggering, as you see right at the end. Just let go, go again. I've painted cars, I've painted houses, so I'm pretty good at spraying pretty evenly, although my vertigo makes it hard to walk straight lines. One other note, you might have noticed I went pretty fast. You normally don't go quite that fast. This is actually a prime coat for a swirl texture I'm gonna do, and in order to do that swirl texture, I need it primed first. So we're gonna do prime coat and then texture it, and then we're gonna prime it again. Well, hey, I better get back to work. What are you guys doing? No, seriously, tell me. Did you stop while you're working, or were you watching Benji come home? I don't know. Let me know what you're doing. Comment on the video, let me know what you think, any questions, so on, and I appreciate you guys stopping by. It's always good to hear from you. You guys are why I do this, so thanks a lot. If you like what we do, be sure and consider supporting us on Patreon, and we thank you. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.